Hello, this is Marcus of AGL Lifestyles, and welcome to today's webinar. Just give me 1 second, and we'll get started. Before we begin, if you have any quick questions, go ahead and type them in the group chat on the side. So there's a live chat bar, which is on your right side of the YouTube screen. And if you have any questions to start off, go ahead and type it out now. Okay. So right now I'm just going to pull up the slideshow. All right, so the title of today's webinar is How to Get Your First Coaching Clients and Transform Their Lives. So my goal for this webinar is to help two types of people. Number one, for beginners, you'll learn how to get your very first coaching client and get that client results. And for more experienced people, you'll learn a powerful psychological method that would create permanent, long-term change for your clients. So my goal for this webinar is, first of all, to let you know that the only way for you to get real results, long-term lasting results for your clients, is to create emotional change. And the only way to create emotional change is through the Eagle method. And I'll explain what that is in about a second. But first, about me. So in the past 2 years, I've taught over 40 students as a dating coach for guys, and 70 to 80% of the students ended up going on a date with a girl or taking her home by the end of the session. And all of my students I've had vastly improved their social skills. Now, before the Eagle method, I would tell my students exactly what to do based on my own life experience. And this is the approach that most coaches take. But the problem with that is that they constantly micromanage whether they're doing the right or wrong thing according to your experience. They're not going by their own experience or their own confidence in themselves, so they never learn how to be truly authentic. And so they never develop the confidence to handle situations on their own. They're always going to be texting you, calling you up, asking for advice, asking for the next step, instead of being able to do things on their own. And knowing what to do isn't usually the problem. It's actually developing the confidence to execute, especially in the face of the unknown. So here's my epiphany moment. I realized that most of my close friends who are successful violated a lot of pre-established rules. They weren't always the smartest or most educated people, but they always carried themselves with a sense of quiet confidence, especially when the odds were seemingly against them. And so I started teaching my students how to be more emotionally aware, especially with their own self-awareness. And here was the result. My students went from being anxious and nervous when striving for their goals to actually enjoying the process. And that was the secret. Developing confidence in your own skills and resourcefulness when the outcome is uncertain leads to success. And when they started trusting themselves to figure out their problems and taking things one step at a time, they began to make actual progress towards their goals. And over time, step by step, they began to achieve their dreams. So here is the Eagle method. The first step is emotion. Release from your limiting beliefs and insecurities. So when I first get a client, I try to understand where his insecurities are coming from. I do mostly listening, and I just ask thought-provoking questions or questions that elicit emotions within him. So examples would be, let's say I have a student who struggles with dating, and he hasn't gone on a date in a while, and he just struggles with his confidence around women. Now, I would ask him, how does it make you feel when you're around a beautiful girl, an attractive girl? And he'll start talking about, his emotions of anxiety, and he feels stifled. And then I'll ask him, are there any other times in your life where that's happened in the past? And maybe it came from when his parents pressured him to be social when he was younger, or to act properly when he was younger. And each of these things add up so that he becomes stifled in that moment with that attractive girl. Or maybe he was rejected very harshly early in his life. The key is to understand where these insecurities are coming from. That way you can release from them. And that takes us to our second step, which is aim. So you want to dream big. You want to be able to set goals for yourself. And well, especially when you're working with students, be able to set goals for your students. And they have to do it themselves, because if you do it for them, then it isn't self-motivated. It isn't self-inspired. And when it's not self-motivated, they're not going to have the continual motivation to keep it going. Their why is coming from you. It's not coming from the student himself. So it's crucial that he becomes self-motivated to the point where he's able to come up with his own why and understand it completely. So that takes us to our third step, which is turn these dreams into your goals. So allow your student to dream big. Once he's released from the insecurities, he has that feeling of relief where he feels the liberty to be able to dream as vastly as he wants to. And once he latches onto that dream, maybe it's making $1 million this year, or maybe it's finding a girlfriend. Whatever that ideal dream is for him, you have to be able to turn that into a goal. And that's a process called anchoring. And the way you do anchoring is through visualization, through writing your goals down, making it more tangible. Because the more tangible you make your goal, the more achievable it is. So you want to write down your goals. You want to visualize them. You want to create affirmations around them. You want to become part of social groups that are aspiring for the same goal, because that also makes it more real for you. You want to go visit. So if, let's say, your goal is to make a certain amount of money and buy a house by the end of the year, you want to go visit that house continually on a consistent basis to really anchor that goal into you. The fourth step is to lead, to actually take the lead on these goals and take action on them. Instead of waiting around, it's always best just to take the first step. Take that first leap of faith. And then it all circles back around to emotion. Because when you do take that leap of faith, then you start feeling emotional resistance. Because yes, you release from your emotions at the beginning, but it's a continual process. That emotional sticking point is going to come up continually until you continue to work through them. It's kind of like when you go to a massage, maybe you get worked, maybe you work through some knots, but then some of them come back because you continue to exercise. But over time, it's going to get better and better. Now, how do you actually work through these emotional resistances? Well, when you're taking action in that moment, first tell yourself that nothing is a big deal. Whatever adversity that you're facing is not a big deal. It's kind of like Floyd Mayweather, how he says, easy work. That's his own mantra, telling himself it's not a big deal. Maybe I'm fighting one of the deadliest people in the world, but it's not a big deal. It's easy work. Number two is to find a solution. So once you calm your emotions down, once you become more objective about it, and you're able to divorce yourself from being so emotionally involved, you're able to be more clear-headed about the situation. So the next step is to find a solution. And the third step is to do it now, not later. Enact it immediately. So when it comes to before and after taking the action, when you're not in the moment, here's the process that you want to follow. So number one, you want to write down what the emotion you're experiencing is. How you feel. The next step is to write down other times you felt that same exact emotion and trace it back as far as you can. Trace it back to your childhood traumas, to other times in your life where you felt that same emotion. Then you want to understand the source or the root cause of that emotion. Try to think back to the very first time you felt that emotion of anxiety. So let's go back to that example we were talking about before with the anxiety around an attractive girl. So maybe you had a crush on a girl in the second grade and you went up to her and asked her if she wanted to play with you, but she just ran away instead. Now, even though that seems like a trivial moment in your life, when you're younger, you're much more impressionable, and that stays in your subconscious. So unless you actually work through that, it's always going to remain there as that kernel, and it starts to take momentum and take steam over time because you gain more and more evidence backing up that belief that attractive girls don't like you, that they'll just run away. So maybe that's your biggest fear, and you have to understand where the root cause is coming from. Because once you understand the root cause, I want you to go back and fully feel that emotion and release from it, either through a guided meditation or a physical release, where maybe you start punching a pillow or something like that. They have those CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy solutions, where sometimes you take a baseball bat and you just beat a couch. Try not to beat an actual person or anything like that, but take it out on something that's relatively innocuous, just so you can release from the stress. Once you do that, you're going to feel a lot better, and you want to create a new belief to rewire your emotional resistance towards that problem. So instead of keeping that belief there in your subconscious, once you've released from it, reform that belief. So it's kind of like working the clay when you're doing pottery. So initially you want to wet the clay, you want to massage it. That way you can reshape it into something else. So the release process is essentially you massaging the clay, and then being able to create a new belief out of that is like sculpting something new out of that wet clay. So that's cool and all, but some of you might be skeptical about this approach and might think it doesn't work for your demographic. But what I found is that the Eagle method applies to any situation. For example, imagine that you're overweight and you want to get in shape. First of all, you want to understand the emotion behind your overeating and resistance to the exercise. So maybe, you dealt with stress. Maybe there's a lot of fighting in your family when you're younger, and the only way you could get that stress out is through the dopamine release that occurs when you go to the cabinet and grab a pack of cookies. That can become addictive over time, and that becomes a habit. So what you want to do is rewire yourself. So remember the second step, to aim, to dream big. So what is that big aspiration? So maybe you're like 50 pounds overweight, but you have this aspiration to run a marathon by the end of the year. There's actually this ex-Navy SEAL. He's pretty famous for being the toughest man in the world. His name is David Goggins. And he tells a story about he was, over 100 pounds overweight. And one time he saw this special about Navy SEALs on TV. And at that moment, he decided, you know what? I'm going to become a Navy SEAL. He dropped everything, went to the recruiting office, and started that journey to become a Navy SEAL, even though everyone thought he was absurdly crazy for having that ridiculous dream. especially since he was overweight. But what you have to realize is that you can achieve any dream. It's yourself that's stopping you. When you allow yourself to listen to others, to listen to external sources telling you that you can't do something, then it's not possible for you to do. Now, there are certain physical limitations, but with something like weight that's changeable, you can achieve that. Something with height, maybe you're 4 foot tall, and it's really difficult to have a dream to go into the NBA if you're not that tall. But you can always, with things that are changeable, like social skills or intelligence or sorry, critical thinking. Intelligence is relatively fixed, but you can fix critical thinking and you can score better on math tests through hard work. It's not intrinsic or inherent. That's part of my own story. And someone like David Goggins, who went out and actually became a Navy SEAL and proceeded to run ultra marathons where he would run 100-mile races where he wouldn't stop for 100 miles and run an entire day. He went from 100 pounds overweight to doing that. So let's go back to our example. You aim to run a marathon by the end of the year, a big dream. The next step is to anchor your goal by repeating it to yourself daily, doing visualizations, joining a running club, and tracking your runs. You want to make your progress towards your goal tangible, and you want to make that outcome tangible. You want to make it feel real, because that is the first step that you need to take in order to actually take meaningful steps towards your goal. And you lead by taking action daily on your goals. So what happens when you start taking daily action? You start going to the gym every day, you start eating more disciplined, you start doing things to get a handle on your weight and trying to reach your goal of running this marathon, is that you're going to feel resistance. You don't want to get your shoes on in the morning because you're afraid to step out the door to go for a run. You have to be able to work with that emotional resistance, and that's where the real progress is made. It's not made in the first week when you're feeling all gung-ho about your new goal. It's made 3 months in when you just want to stop and you're tired of it, and you feel hopeless and disillusioned and jaded because maybe you got injured along the way, but you have to pick yourself back up and just get on the horse again and release from the emotions that are involved with it. So here's why this method is effective. So usually coaches try to tell their students what to do in different situations and give them how-to knowledge. So back to that previous example, this would be an example of maybe the student calls the coach every day and the coach tells them, you should do this, this, and this run. You should do this, this, and this run. You should go to the store here. You should do this. Yes, the how-to knowledge is important. And yes, eventually you do give the how-to knowledge, but you have to have the student understand their why. That is the most important part of this, because if they're not self-motivated, they're going to give up. So the EAGLE method is an action-oriented process that focuses on emotional self-awareness and motivation. So basically, you're teaching the student how to become self-motivated. So here's an example of a student who I taught using the EAGLE method. And basically, he was talking about how, working together was a huge turning point for him during the summer. And this is under the context of dating. Basically, he was going out continually. He was trying to get more dates, trying to hook up with girls. And he was making some progress socially, but he wasn't really getting results. And so when I was working with him, I was trying to understand where his insecurities emotionally were coming from, where his resistance was coming from, and trying to work with that. And the biggest thing I saw was that he wasn't having fun when he was going out. He wasn't enjoying the process. And, there's a balance to it. Some guys take too much enjoyment in the process and never focus on the results. And some guys are too results oriented and never focus on the process. And it's a matter of understanding as a coach where your student is. So this student in particular, I had to bring him back towards enjoying what he was doing. Because if you're not enjoying the process of going out and talking to people, they're going to feel that. And they're not going to enjoy the interaction either. It's going to be torture for the both of you. So that was really the biggest thing that I was encouraging him to do. And over the course of, well, at this point, it was a month and a half we had been working together. He ended up getting late a couple of times in 1 week. And he started to become more ambitious and wanting to take more financial responsibility for himself and had this new goal to become financially independent. And I think it's important to set really ambitious goals for yourself. Otherwise, you lose that sense of purpose in your life. And once you lose that sense of purpose, serotonin goes down. Your dopamine and your serotonin both go down because dopamine is the motivation chemical in your brain. And if you're not motivated or ambitious to do anything in your life, you start to become depressed. You start to become less, like the ambition is momentum based. So if you're not ambitious, you're going to be stuck in a rut forever. And secondly, when it comes to serotonin, if you never find what your purpose or your role in society is, then you're going to feel unfulfilled. And so the combination of those two things gave him some direction because he started to think about this more critically. So this is just one example of one of my students who learned the Eagle method. And I have more that I'm going to talk about later in the webinar. So you might be asking yourself, how will this improve my coaching business? Because if someone believes that you can help them attain life-changing results, then they'll be willing to pay any price for your coaching. Then the next challenge, how do you show them that you can give them the results that they want, especially when you're just starting and you have 0 clients? Well, there are 3 secrets to starting your own coaching business. Number 1, you want to start with value work. So this is how to get your first clients. Secret number 2 is experiential learning, how to create significant and lasting changes for your clients. So you need some sort of method so you can guarantee results for the clients you're working with. And secret number 3 is social proofing. So how do you gain more credibility in your community to get more clients? So let's go through secret number 1 first. So value work, offer free sessions. You always want to over-deliver value for your clients. And if you offer free sessions, then you're automatically over-delivering because anything that you give to them is an over-deliverance of value. So go to your friends and family first, and you can use Facebook if you want to. But basically the point of this is to hone your craft. If you want to get better at mentorship and coaching, you need practice. And you do this by offering low cost sessions or offering free sessions so you can get your first clients in the door. And make sure that you document everything. When I first started, I did free work for about 5 months. And finally, after about 5 months, I had someone who wanted to pay for my coaching, but I didn't document anything. But when I started keeping track of my clients' results, recording my sessions, collecting testimonials, people began to see the value. And what was the result? Well, by May 2016, I had 25 paying clients in that month. But you might be thinking, How much documenting did I have to do and for how long? Well, I just collected testimonials, recorded audio from some of our sessions, and followed up with clients after our sessions. And it didn't require any fancy equipment, just a smartphone will do. And you're probably thinking, but where do I put out the content that I document? Create a landing page. Then use the platform of your choice, whether that's YouTube, podcasting, Facebook, Instagram, to drive traffic page. It sounds complicated, but I'll come back to this at the end of the webinar. So here is secret number 2, experiential learning, and you can do this through the EAGLE method. So remember, that's emotion, aim, goals, lead, emotion. So before teaching the EAGLE method, my students were positive about the coaching that I offered, so they always gave me compliments on my coaching, but the truth is that the results were haphazard. However, once I created the EAGLE method and started teaching it, the results skyrocketed and the reviews were raving. So here's some students who learned the EAGLE method. And so this is another student that I had when I was doing dating coaching about how basically I offered a breakdown for him, and he said that he used to have this belief that girls almost always reject me. To actually see and have shown specific technical things that are causing it were very valuable. And it was a very meaningful part of the learning process for him. So remember, I talked about emotion and rewiring beliefs, and that's where it's coming from. Breaking down his former beliefs, understanding his insecurities, and then releasing from those and forming new beliefs on top of that, and really inculcating those new beliefs through physical evidence by going out and taking action. That's what it's about. And here's another student who I taught the EAGLE method to, and he basically, so I took him out to a nightclub, and after we went to one nightclub at first. We spent about an hour and a half there. Then we went to another nightclub. And after about 15 minutes, he connected with this girl and ended up taking her home really quickly. It was quite surprising to me, but it was just because we had a talk between the nightclubs, and I talked about how he was feeling. And I used this process, and I didn't really tell him what to do. I was working with his emotional state, and that self-motivated, that re-inspired him to execute. And so all of this was self-inspiration, and just by following this method, he was able to execute for himself. And that's what it's about. It's about getting your clients results, but not just that, but also how do you teach them the tools to be able to do it on their own in the long term? That's how you get lifelong clients, and that's how you get more referrals. But you're probably thinking, the EAGLE method sounds good in theory, but is it practical? Yes, it's focused on internal, emotional, and psychological development, but it's rooted in action and gaining experience quickly. Action and experience is what makes it effective. So you can theorize about how to do things for hours, but the way to get results is through focused practice. So secret number 3 is social proofing. Basically, you want to collect testimonials from your clients, especially your first ones, and use the sessions that you documented as a demonstration of your coaching. Then you want to create a landing page online and drive traffic to it, at least with Facebook ads. And then later on, you can add podcasting and YouTube and Instagram later on. Before using social proof, I would just talk about what I would teach my students. But then I realized that you want to show, not just tell. Showing and demonstrating is where prospective clients actually get to see what you're doing, what your method is, what your actual results for your clients are. So here's an example of showing instead of telling. I recently made this podcast, and in this podcast, I just record my coaching sessions with one of my students, and you can see week by week what his weekly progress is like. And it's an incredible transformation. In the beginning, he was skeptical about things. He would be too in his head about things. Had these preformed ideas that were based not in reality, but from his ivory tower of academia. And then we start to break these beliefs and ideas down one by one. And essentially, over time, you see this transformation where he starts executing more. And it's still ongoing. It's still an ongoing process, but the improvement is tangible. And you might be thinking, this sounds like a promising idea, but it seems like a lot of work. But here's the truth, is that I created my podcast in less than 2 days. And if you've been documenting consistently, then all you have to do is edit and post the content. And I'll talk about this more in depth at the end of the webinar. So let me ask you a question. If you followed what I showed you in secret number 1 and created value work, then you did what I showed you in secret number 2 and employed the Eagle method. Then you used secret number 3 to create social proof. Do you think you could be successful? And let me ask you another question. How many of you are excited about what we just talked about? How many of you are feeling a little overwhelmed because we've covered so much? Is it okay with you if I spend just 10 minutes going over a very special offer I created to help you implement the Eagle method? Well, here's what you're going to get. An 8-week Eagle certification course where the lessons go through step by step how to get your first clients, how to get them results, and how to build a loyal following so that you will always have a strong clientele base wanting your coaching. And here's what we're going to cover. In week 1, we're going to craft a company philosophy and a personal mission statement. In week 2, it's about getting your first clients in the door. Week 3 is part 1 of the Eagle method, which is emotion and aim. Week 4 is part 2 of the Eagle method, which is goals and leading. And week 5 is part 3 of the Eagle method, which is emotional resistance. Now, once your clients start getting results using the Eagle method, I'll teach you how to create a landing page and drive traffic to it. Then in week 7, we talk about the foundational principles of SEO, how to generate organic traffic via Google. And week 8 is effective methods of content marketing using podcasting, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So I want to go back and make sure you realize who this is for. It's for people just starting their coaching business or for those who are already successful and want more clients. And you might be thinking you can't get started with this because you don't have enough experience yet, or you should be more prepared before diving in. But here's why that's a mistake that will hold you back from success. Because the only coaches who succeed with their businesses are those who take action quickly. And if you're the type to hesitate or wait for the optimal time, you'll gain experience slower. And when you sign up, you're going to get instant access to the 8-week certification course at total value of $12,000. And as part of this package, you're going to get a group chat and weekly Q&A calls. These are tools to help you track your progress, hold yourself accountable, have a team of ambitious peers, and have access to guys who are already successful coaches today. And when you have this at your disposal, you'll be able to learn and adopt the behaviors and mindsets of successful coaches. And when you have this tool, you'll be able to get rid of worrying about whether you're going to get any clients and whether you can deliver results for them. You might be thinking that you've been a part of group chats before, and it just ends up as people posting funny GIFs and memes. And although we do have fun with it, you also have a wealth of knowledge on demand. Whenever you have a question, you can get an answer from an experienced coach in a matter of seconds. I've carefully handpicked each coach, and they have a range of expertise in personal training, nutrition, dating, relationships, fashion, martial arts, and online marketing. So you'll get solid guidance and mentoring on how to become a successful coach or mentor in a variety of different fields. When I was first figuring this stuff out, I ran into a big roadblock, and I didn't know how to get and keep my first clients. I had no one else to turn to. I was on my own. So I had to create the Eagle method for myself. Way back then, I had to spend weeks and months to figure out an efficient way to handle this problem. But I don't want you to have to reinvent the wheel, because I've already gotten proven results with this method. And I'm just going to give it to you with this package. Does that sound cool? You're probably thinking that you need to get more experience on your own first before investing in any tools. But the problem with that is that you're losing potential clients right off the bat, and you're just prolonging the success of your own business. So here's what you're getting: the Eagle certification course, weekly training videos, weekly Q&A sessions with coaches, and access to the AGL mentorship group chat. When you invest today, you're also going to get access to a secret Facebook group, which will help you with tracking your progress and holding yourself accountable. I had to go through hours and hours of coaching to become even somewhat proficient. But you won't have to, because you'll already have access to advice from coaches who are already successful. This bonus is going to make it faster and easier for you to get results for your clients. How? Because, as Jim Rohn said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you're actively participating in the group with successful coaches, you'll become a successful coach yourself. You might be thinking, there's no way a Facebook group can be that effective. And the truth is, it won't be if you just take the advice at face value. There are plenty of videos, podcasts, and coaching material for you to learn from. But if you actively participate in the group, you will inherit the subtleties behind the way successful coaches think and behave. You may not notice it, but the small incremental changes will add up to a massive difference in the long term. And you might be thinking that you've tried Facebook groups in the past, and it just ends up as a bunch of guys posting and boasting their own accomplishments, seeking validation from one another. But with this group, I've carefully hand-selected the most qualified coaches who I've lived with and traveled with personally, and I can attest that they're not in it just to brag or impress anyone. They joined to genuinely help others and to learn from each other and from the students. Now, obviously, I'm not going to charge you $12,000. But if I did charge $12,000 and all it did was help you get your first few paying clients, would it be worth $12,000? If all this system did was guarantee your clients results, would it be worth $12,000? And if all it did was help you create a recognizable brand for yourself on Facebook, iTunes, Instagram, or YouTube, would it be worth $12,000? I had 2 choices with this. I could go as cheap as possible and try to sell as many as possible. But the problem with that is I couldn't really stack on the value for you. So I decided to go with a second option, which obviously requires a slightly higher investment on your side. But in exchange for that, we can dedicate more time, energy, and resources to help you guarantee your success. So if you had a successful coaching business today that was making you money and allowed you to quit your 9-to-5 job, what would it be worth to you? How much would you have to pay to have that one successful coaching business? You can probably see why people pay $12,000 for a similar result from me. Because it's not a cost, it's an investment. You've already seen how it's worth $12,000. And even at $5,000, which I charge the public, it's a great deal. But because you chose to join this webinar today, I'm going to give you a very special offer. $19.97. Now let me put this into perspective for you. If you went to my regular website right now, you could buy this same product for $5,000. But because you've invested this time with me and you've proven that you really want to get this result, I'm making a very special offer just for this webinar. If you were to enroll into a typical life coaching program, it might cost $10,000, something like IPEC. But because you're learning how to do it yourself, and I'm giving you all the tools and resources to make it happen fast, you only pay $19.97. So at this point, you have two choices. Choice number one is to do nothing. If you do nothing with the information you've learned over the past hour, what will you get? Nothing. Or you can choose to take a leap of faith. Just test it out to see if it will work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. The real question is this: is it worth gambling a few minutes of your time to check this out? Even if it does half of what I've claimed today, it will pay for itself as soon as 1 month. So here's what you get: the Eagle certification course, weekly training videos for 8 weeks, weekly Q&A sessions with the coaches, access to the AGL mentorship group chat, and the secret Facebook group. Here's the catch: there are only 10 spots for this class. And after all these spots are filled, the deal is gone. So immediately following this webinar, I'll send an email to you. And if you're interested in becoming AGL certified, then let's set a time to talk. All right, so I'm going to come back to Q&A right now. I'm going to stop this screen share. All right, so here we go, back to YouTube. So if any of you guys have questions, please type them in the live chat now. I'm just going to type something really quickly. So I just typed hello. You can type in the group chat on the sidebar for any questions that you have. Otherwise, I'll see you via email. I'll send you an email. And if you're interested in joining the certification course, or just interested in talking about it, then let's chat for a bit. You know, I want to get to know you first, and I want to see if you're even qualified before allowing you to take the course. Basically, the qualification just means that you know, you're ambitious, you're patient, you're a good listener. I need to make sure that you have certain things in order before I allow you to take this course, because it is rigorous. It is a decent amount of work. It's simple, and it's not a ton of work if you just follow the steps, but you will face some emotional resistance towards it, like I talked about before. And the thing is, if you're not fully prepared emotionally to take this on, then you're probably not going to get through it, and I don't want you to fail. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you an email. And once again, if you're interested, reply to that and just talking. No obligation to sign up. We'll just chat for a bit. And I want to get to know you. I want to get to know what your life is like, what sticking points or obstacles you have in your life currently. And then we'll just continue our conversation from there. Once again, thank you so much for joining today's webinar, and I'll see you soon.